All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the War Games Podcast number 11 now. Thank you for joining us tonight. Tonight, we are going to be going over Operation Crimson Moon Phase 10 with Task Forces Charlie and Bravo. As well, after that, we are going to be taking you guys through kind of step by step how we come into the concept of a deployment, how we actually go about forming the missions, coming up with the ideas for them, how we carry that out between warn orders, operation orders, briefings, completing the actual mission, debriefings, so on and so forth. So we're going to take you guys through step by step exactly how a mission comes to be for the 506th. But first, let me introduce you guys to who is going to be joining me tonight. First and foremost, we have Master Sergeant Avery, who is our senior JTAC within the unit. We also have Staff Sergeant Myers, and we have Corporal Patty. Staff Sergeant Myers being a squad leader, Corporal Patty being a team leader. And Sergeant Myers has been on here with me before, so if you guys have caught the podcast that he was on, you already kind of know Sergeant Myers' background. The other two, however, have not been on here with me yet, so let's get to know Corporal Patty and Master Sergeant Avery a little bit. Let's start with you, Patty. What brought you to the 506? How did you find us?
I was looking for some kind of realism group, and I, of course, went to YouTube to try to find something interesting. So I found Jester's videos, and after a week or two of kind of keeping up with operations and stuff like that, I went to the website and got signed up. Kind of initially wanting to get involved with aviation, but after I went through my training, I felt like I had a calling to blow shit up. So I went to the weapons squad.
As we all do eventually. And do you remember who your instructors were for recruit training and OSUT?
Yeah, my recruit training was Captain Soto, and I was back and forth in OSIT because of my schedule. So actually, I had yourself for sergeant, and I'm trying to think of back then who was the second OSIT instructor.
Would have been Lieutenant Lewis.
That was it, Lieutenant Lewis.
Okay, so you kind of got mixture of both. So you were bouncing back and forth between Class Alpha and Class Bravo. So did you report directly into weapons from OSUT?
I did. I was tasked with reporting into Havoc 2's 2-4 weapons squad, where I was placed under, at the time, Corporal Thomas's Charlie. I was his donkey to start out.
Okay, and for those of you listening that don't know what a donkey is, our donkeys are ammunition handlers or A gunners. And you are now team lead, and you have been in team lead for how long?
Approximately 2.5 months, 3 months.
Okay, so a decent amount of time now. You've been running a team in a weapons squad, and you're in an armor team, primarily carrying Maws, but we do take the Javs out here and there. And the reason for that being, guys, you may wonder why, probably 80 to 90% of the time we're running Maws instead of Javelins. Simple reasoning is the Maws, we can carry more rounds for it. The Javelin, you can only carry a couple of rounds per team for it, where the Maws, you can carry a couple more. The Javelin is much stronger, has much more range, obviously, but the ammo limitations kind of hinder that a little bit. And so for yourself, Patty, what has your experience been like in the 506th? How has it been for you in your time here?
It's been something that I've kind of made a priority in gaming. When I sit down, I'll check in with the 506 before I do anything else. It's been just a great experience all over, and I have a real sense of camaraderie with the guys in 2-4, and we bust up on each other, and we just enjoy each other's company. I've made some lifelong internet friends here, and at the same time, it's really reignited my love for Arma. I can't play Arma 3 any other way now besides how I play it with the 506th.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. I mean, I myself, I've never played Arma outside of realism units, and I never have the want to. Like, even when the new missions or whatever were released with the Laws of War DLC, you know, I had guys asking if I was going to play and stuff. And God, no. Like, I have never once stepped foot in the single player portion of Arma just because I have absolutely no interest in it. All right, so now you guys know Patty a little bit. He's been in the unit for a little while now, runs an armor team, has been blowing shit up for quite some time. Let's move on to Avery. Now, myself and Avery have quite a long history together. We've been basically working with each other in one way or another damn near my entire time in the unit. And as most of you probably don't know, he was actually my OSUT instructor back in the day, back when I came into the 506th. He was one of the OSUT instructors. So, Avery, what got you into the 506? What brought you here?
Well, there's probably a handful of us now. I probably can count on my two hands how many of us came from the 15th to the 506 when was stood up by the captain. I was first in the 15th as Gambler 3-1 as a team leader, and shortly after I got team lead position, Captain Drum and I left the 15th and started 506. And like a lot of people, I jumped ship to the 506. I think I was actually the 100th person to be accepted into the unit, if that's still true after applying again recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty much it. I mean, I didn't go into the 15th like watching YouTube videos or anything. I just sort of joined because I had a few buddies that were involved, and that's how I got into the 506.
And you came into the 506, and by the time I got here, you were the weapons squad leader. You were Havoc 1-4. So you were the weapons squad leader for 1-4. And also, as I said, an OSUT instructor back then. And then eventually you moved to the position of 1-6, which is the platoon leader for Havoc 1. And by that time, you had gotten back out of OSUT. You were not an OSUT instructor any longer. However, in December of, it was back in 2015, you're actually the one that helped me get started in OSUT as far as an instructor. When it came to Winter Stand-Down of 2016, there was going to be no classes run. And I didn't really like that idea. At that time, I was a recruit instructor only. And I wanted OSUT to still be running through Winter Stand-Down because my recruit classes were still going to be running. So I went to the OSUT chief at the time and said, hey, you know, would you be willing to let me come in as an OSUT instructor and run a class during Winter Stand-Down so we can still get guys through the pipeline? And it was approved along with you coming in as the senior instructor on that, as you had been an instructor before. And we had a massive class come through in that Winter Stand-Down. I think the first day we had, like 24 or 26 guys or some shit. It was a huge class.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. And during that time when I was an OSUT instructor, even before this whole Winter Stand-Down thing that you're referring to, we used to have massive classes. I believe your class was like 16 people graduation
Yeah, we
day.
had a full class, yeah.
I remember that class. It was tax day in the day 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just had crazy classes back in that day.
Yeah, and obviously, well, not obviously, but as some people know, when you moved to 1-6, I then took your position as 1-4. And I had been offered multiple squads in other places in the unit and other platoons, but I had turned them down until you approached me about 1-4, and I pretty much immediately said yes because it was in Havoc 1. I knew that was the only place I was willing to take a squad lead position, was in Havoc 1. And we worked together as far as you being platoon lead and me being a squad leader for, hell, quite some time, 8 months, pretty much. We were working together. And then you took a break from the 506th for a while. What was it, maybe 6 months? I don't even know if it was that long. 4 to 6,
somewhere in there. I basically, just to touch up on that, I basically left the unit and went to a different unit, and I hated every single minute of it. then I came back.
Yeah, and then the prodigal son returned. And you came back, and instead of going back into infantry, which is what you had done before, you decided to join the TACP, the Tactical Air Control Party, which for those of you that don't understand what a TACP is, our guys on the ground communicating with air assets, they are JTACs, Joint Terminal Attack Controllers, or something along those lines. I forget the actual anagram or whatever the hell it is. They make up the TACP, which is a party of JTACs. So that individual person isn't a TACP, they're a JTAC. All of them together form a TACP. There's always a lot of confusion with that. So you came back into the unit and went the JTAC route, working with air assets, and eventually moved your way up to becoming where you are now, the senior JTAC within the TACP, which means Avery is essentially in charge of all of the other JTACs that we have in the unit. And how is that for you being a JTAC? How do you like it?
Well, something that comes really naturally to me is radio communications. I guess being Havoc 1 platoon leader for a very, very long time, it just clicks with me. I like talking to multiple people at once, listening to two different conversations at the same exact time, that whole thing. And I guess that's just why I went to the TACP. It was the closest thing to what I did in the past.
Right, and that's really one of the big requirements for joining the TACP, and that's why you have to be at least the grade of E4 before you can even be accepted into the TACP, is because of the radio communications part of it, because you are on the radio so much, as you said, listening to multiple conversations at the same time, talking to multiple people at the same time, calling in 9 lines while, getting shouted at by one of us task force commanders. It can definitely be a very stressful job, especially when shit has hit the fan and we need ECAS and things are just going bad. JTACs basically become the fucking hero of the moment. Air assets are always praised because they're the ones that actually do the killing. But without the JTACs there to pass that information from us on the ground up to the guys in the air, it would be pretty goddamn bad. Because I've done operations before where I was task force commander and also the JTAC at the same time. And it is damn near impossible to keep everything on the ground coordinated at the same time, calling in, gun runs and different casts and stuff like that, as well as handling fire missions with Havoc 4. It's damn near impossible to be a task force commander and a JTAC at the same time. So they definitely save our ass quite often. Now, on top of that, and I actually forgot to ask real quick, jumping back to Patty. Patty, do you have any secondary billets within the unit?
No, I do not. I've been looking to get involved in secondary billets, but up until now, I've just made rank that would basically be allowed to take a secondary, and but I'm raring to go whenever I can find one that needs help.
Now, don't come fucking knocking on my door. Everybody wants to get involved in S3. Go fucking talk to Hammer in S1. They always want people to do paperwork. That being said, now Avery, you do have secondary billets, and one of those secondary billets being that of a operations specialist or a Zeus operator, and really, I guess kind of my reasoning behind making Avery a Zeus operator. Obviously, we had worked together for a long time. You had all the experience from running OSUT as a Zeus operator, and then on top of that, being a platoon leader and running platoon trainings and stuff as a Zeus operator. So it was really a no-brainer. And we had worked together as Zeus multiple times as well. So you're also a Zeus operator, and you're one of my secondary Zeus operators for which task force?
Task Force Bravo.
Okay, so you are secondary for Task Force Bravo, and you work with who is the primary for Bravo?
Captain Soto is the primary.
There you go, gentlemen. The fucking rock star himself. So Captain Soto is primary on Bravo. You are secondary. So not only do you guys work together in the sense of JTAC and Thunder, but you guys also Zeus together. So you guys spend a lot of time together on top of training and shit that you guys do, which a lot of you guys may not realize, but our TAC-P train a lot with our air assets. Like, those guys do not fuck around when it comes to training. They spend a lot of time together. That's why oftentimes, when you hear a call for CAS come in and they start dropping 9 lines and shit like that, it sounds so well, I guess, rehearsed, if you will, because of how much training that they do together. And that's why it's as impressive as it is. But when it comes to Zeusing, this takes us into our recap of the operations this last weekend, which was Phase 10. Saturday night, we went to get going on the mission, and as you guys know, Drum also Zeused Saturday alongside Avery. And due to some miscommunication and memory of a gerbil, Drum forgot that he was Zeusing Saturday. So when I got in there, I actually started building the mission, and Avery was going to fill in with Havoc 3. And after we talked for a few minutes, he realized I was in there starting to Zeus my own mission. And as the fucking awesome guy that he is, was like, hey, I'll, if you need me, I'll come in there and Zeus it. Which, of course, I obviously said yes. So you hopped in there with maybe 45 minutes left until the start of the mission and started going at it. And for those of you guys, and this is something that we'll go over here in a little bit, it's not necessarily quick to set up a mission for, the scale of stuff that we do. I usually take anywhere from 2.5 hours to set up one of our missions. Which, granted, I spent a lot of that time just fucking around, not really doing anything. I could do it a lot quicker if I had to. But still, it's not something that can quickly be done. So going into Saturday, Avery, did you feel like you were kind of under the gun to hurry up and get shit done?
A little bit. Before, when I was Havoc 1-6, I was also a primary Zeus operator. I don't think we had primary secondaries back then. I think it was just the one.
Yeah, it was. And me and you actually went through Zeus training at the same time.
Yeah.
Or if you want to call it Zeus training.
Yeah, hardly. It was just like, these are what the modules do, and that's it. But so I came in as a secondary recently here, like past 2 months maybe.
Yeah, and, something like that.
I haven't really done a primary thing for a long time, so yeah, it was a little stressful for me at first, but then I do have a lot of experience in another unit and this unit being the primary as well.
Right, you still know your way around.
Yeah, it was just like, it was more of just trying to remember how everything worked, basically.
Yeah, and for any of you guys that don't really understand how that works as far as a primary and secondary Zeus operator, we used to always run a single Zeus operator in our operations, which was fine. It worked okay, but it's very difficult for one person to keep up the pressure on 60 people. When you're, spawning new units, issuing orders to them, trying to remote control the ones that are retarded, it's very difficult for one person to manage. So I went to the rest of Unit HQ and said, hey, I want to put a second Zeus operator in every single mission. Give me 6 Zeus operators and the missions will be better. And that's what we did. So now we have a primary and a secondary. The primary is the one who builds the mission, places down all of the units, so on. The secondary is simply there to handle, some fire missions from mortars or remote control shit, primarily is what they're doing. Is there to remote control things that are either A, acting retarded, or B, not engaging when they should be, so on and so forth. So that's what Avery does a lot. That's what he spends a lot of his time doing, is remote controlling stuff. But going into Saturday, you obviously had to build the mission like we were talking about. And then Drum was able to join in there, and I presume the two of you just immediately went to work throwing all the units down and just getting shit done, right?
Yeah, pretty much. There's like an unspoken like link between the Zeus operators. Once both of us start get working, we just shut up and work basically, and we work together.
And Saturday, for anybody that didn't catch the stream, I was task force commander, and we were just moving 2 clicks north to clear out this enemy held town. Nothing real special, but we were taking the trucks with us for the added fire superiority. Anytime that an objective is close to us and we can get those trucks in there, we take the trucks with us. Granted, oftentimes the trucks end up getting fucking blown up because guys don't know how to fucking park them in a safe area. But those weapon systems give us a lot of fucking firepower, especially the Mark 19s. Obviously, you guys watching all know I'm a big fan of the Mark 19. So we loaded up the trucks, started pushing north towards the objective, and we were maybe a click away from the town when we hit first contact, and I had my face fucking buried in the periscope camera on the GCV, and as soon as the first shot started ringing out, I started scanning the horizon, and I immediately spotted what was an SPG-9, which is essentially a recoilless rifle mounted on a tripod. Spotted him, called him out to Havoc 3, and it ended up taking out one of our trucks, the lead truck, pretty much immediately. And I come to find out later from Drum that actually what began that engagement was a AI on a dishcom firing at us from like a click out, which is really fucking surprising. Normally AI won't engage from that far out, so it was really nice seeing that when I went back and watched Drum's video. But again, that SPG-9 hit the lead truck, took out the lead truck. Immediately, react to contact begins. Everybody started maneuvering and shit. And probably 10 minutes into the first engagement, that SPG-9 still hadn't been taken out. Like, they still hadn't spotted it somehow. How? I have no fucking clue. So I ended up catching it again, got the range for it and everything, called Havoc 3 over to my position, or called Havoc 3-6 over to my position, which is Lieutenant Oliveira, and told him, hey, get your fucking DM over here and take out this fucking SPG-9. He gets the DM over there. DM cannot see him for whatever reason, just can't see him. So eventually I just told him to drop his fucking weapon system, and he dropped the weapon. I picked it up, took a couple shots to range him in, and then ended up dropping him, gave him his weapon back, and carried on. Now, in that first engagement, Avery, were you more taking the primary role of issuing orders and stuff, or were you more remote controlling shit in that initial engagement?
I was doing a little bit of both.
Nice.
I started flanking the squads that were patrolling around the area to the roadblock. And I was also remote controlling a gas next to that roadblock in the tree line before you guys pulled up to it, because I didn't want it to mow everyone down to Mark 19, because it has a dual weapon system with the Mark 19 and the machine, whatever it is. So I was remote controlling that and just sort of spraying with the machine gun.
Yeah, the AGS-30, which those things, when the AI gets on those AGS-30s, they can be fucking bad. Very, very bad. I actually watched one, and it was completely AI controlled. I never took control of them. It was a stationary AGS-30. It wasn't one mounted on a gun truck, but he ran the thing completely out of ammo and took out 2 of our gun trucks with an AGS-30, so they're incredibly dangerous. Yeah, so those guys that were flanking us then from the west and stuff, that was you having them react to contact, which is something that we as Zeus operators do a lot. We as players react to contact. AI does the same thing, or the best we can make it do as Zeus operators. As you guys know, majority of the time, they don't fucking agree with us very much. But we try to make them react to contact. So we continued to push forward through the town. We actually flanked around the west side there and ran into a couple of those patrols. and were able to get up into the town from the west side there. And Havoc 4 as well as other elements of Havoc 3 maintained their position on the MSR and continued pushing directly up the MSR and took control of the roadblock there that we were previously talking about. And they maintained position there for quite a while. And while we were getting hit by all kinds of shit out to the east, I had cleared Havoc 4 to self-designate fire missions out there to the east, because obviously they had much better eyes out there than I did. I had a town in between me and the eastern flank. So they were clear to drop mortars on whatever the fuck they saw fit out there, while I continued to push up on the western side of town. Now, once we got into town, the town was pretty well crawling with infantry, guys garrisoned inside the buildings and stuff like that, and that was where really the second mistake came into play, and that was when we actually pushed into the town. I went to run by a building, and out of force of habit, anytime I move past a doorway or whatever, I always turn and look inside of it. I don't care if troops have already moved through there. I always clear my danger areas before moving past them, just out of habit. And sure as shit, I turn to the left, look inside this doorway, and here's a fucking ass bag in a gray uniform. Luckily not staring directly at me. So I cleared the fucking funnel, got up against the wall, and peeked back in there, flipped the fun switch on the M4, dropped them, and finished clearing the building with my dagger element. But I knew that infantry had already moved through that area, which meant they did a dog shit job of clearing the buildings. And that wasn't the only time that happened throughout the night. There was a second time later on in the operation where I was moving back south towards that roadblock where Havoc 4 was at. They were under very immediate threat from danger close armor, and I actually grabbed a Moz gunner and said, hey, come with me. And we ran back down there. Well, in the process of running down there, past a brick building that was partially destroyed, and I look over to the right, sure as shit, here's a motherfucker standing inside of it. So after I got done fucking shit myself, I shot him and then continued on south down the road. Now, throughout the entire night, you guys as Zeus were hitting us from pretty much all sides except from the south. North, west, east, southeast, pretty much everywhere you guys were hitting us. And I'm guessing that was quite a bit of workload on you guys to be able to keep up the pressure like you did from all sides. Were you just kind of running around like a maniac trying to get everything hitting us from all sides?
Yeah, pretty much. That whole town was just in a great position. It was an elevated position, and he had fields in every direction, except for the southwest side. It was rough just getting squads to get close to you, so that's why we had to resort to rushing armor, basically. Yeah,
and that's, our air assets were doing their absolute best to keep that armor off of us. But they can only do so much. So some armor was able to get very close to us, especially Havoc 4, like I mentioned a second ago. We had to run down there and kind of pull them out of the fire a little bit, if you will. And at one point, I remember me and Drum had talked about this later on. There was this mortar pit set up on the west side of town, and we were eventually able to take that thing out. We had dropped mortars on it, hit it with fucking Mavericks. It took a while to get that mortar pit taken out. Eventually, infantry were able to move in there and secure it. But anyways, later on in the operation, I had heard an AGS-30 firing from over on that west side of town. And I began moving over there. And I get over there by those mortar pits, and sure as shit, I look out there, and there's a Gaz with a Dishcum and an AGS-30 on it. And there's an asshole on an AGS-30 firing it into town, just pretty much not really blindly firing, but just blanketing the entire west side of the town. And I end up dropping him and told Havoc 3 to get a squad over there, that there may be more guys fucking downslope there. Come to find out, there wasn't any. It was just a single dude that happened to be left out there, and Drum took control of him real quick and hopped in that AGS-30 and started fucking laying some havoc out there. But I didn't know that at the time. I figured it was a new GAZ that pulled up there. But luckily I was able to down that guy. How fucking nobody else spotted him, I have no idea. And nobody even knew what the hell it was firing. Like, I could hear the thump from the AGS-30, and I knew instantly that it was a fucking grenade launcher. But again, I was able to get over there, dispatch that thing. And at that point, that's when I gave the order to Havoc 3, like, look, I don't give a fuck what's going on. We're in defensive positions. You need to get squads set up basically on the four corners of this fucking town and stop moving guys back and forth, because I'm sure you could see that as Zeus, them like dispatching a squad from one side of town all the way over to the other side, and just squads like bouncing all over the place. So I'm guessing you could see that from Zeus, right?
Yeah.
And
there's a whole lot of movement in that town.
Yeah, it was not working out, because you'd have, a squad on the north side get hit, and they'd dispatch somebody else up there to help them out, and then the squad on the east side would get hit, and then they'd have to get dispatched over there. And it was just a big fucking shitty game of Ring Around the Rosie, because, again, you guys were keeping the pressure up on all sides, so it was not working out well. However, once they got securely set up in those positions, and I also, when I moved up to Havoc 4's position, I pulled them back into the town with us, and they set up covering kind of our southwestern flank there. Once we got set up in those fixed defensive positions, that's pretty much when it started calming down, because once we were all set up like that, I don't really think there was much you guys could have done to really pressure us all that much. Once they stopped fucking moving around and just sat in place and covered their sectors, there wasn't really much of anything getting close to us at that point. And once we did get set up in those positions, it wasn't very long before mission complete was called. So we had successfully cleared out that town from enemy presence. And again, that was mission complete. So it was mission successful. We did lose a couple of trucks in it, but we were able to get it done. And I don't believe we had any KIAs Saturday. Now, that being said, going into Sunday with Task Force Bravo. Now, Myers, you are Havoc 2-1 squad lead. So that was your operation Sunday. Now, the operation was almost the exact same as what Havoc 3 was doing, just pushing into a town to clear it. However, the exception being that the town you guys were pushing into was much, much larger than the town that Task Force Charlie had taken. Now, what were your initial thoughts going into this mission, especially given the size of the town?
So, I knew it was going to be a lot of mount, and I knew there was going to be a decent number of armor and a decent number of troops. Regardless of, pre-planning, and even, in my squad training a couple hours before, I said to my guys, I was like, look, it's going to be rough. It's going to be a lot of mount, we're going to be going down a lot, but we have our other squads to lean on. Despite that, it was still rough. All I can really say that mission was for us. It was, you were Zeusing for it, and we spoke a little bit afterwards about the mission.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was probably the most difficult mission I've ever faced. At all within this unit. It's especially as a squad leader, so I've got more to think about and more to do. That mission maxed me out.
Now, was it as bad as you expected, or was it worse?
I didn't think it was going to be that bad. I just didn't. I don't know. Like, I think if we maybe switch the plans up and we change our positioning a little bit, but you and I spoke about it when my squad, we were up on some little ridge line. Trying to kind of consolidate and help. 2-2 was another, they kind of got in the got a little bit stuck there. I think they got hit by IDF. They got hit by something and they had a maskaz. So I brought my squad over because we were, only maybe a couple 100 meters away. We moved over.
And your repayment for that was
3 maskazes within 10 minutes.
Yes. And very quickly before we get too far into what happened in this operation and stuff, and again, I was Zeusing for it, which is what you guys are watching right now, video wise. Going into this operation, Patty, being a team leader of a weapons squad, obviously knowing there was going to be armor in the town, but you obviously have to think a little bit differently, because we do have to worry about collateral damage and not, destroying half the fucking town. What were your thoughts going into this operation and seizing a town this large?
Well, to get started, normally I have to suggest the idea to my squad lead that, do we want to bring the javelin on this mission?
Mm-hmm.
Before that even got out of my mouth, I heard the LT call for a javelin team, which to me was immediately like, oh shit.
We're facing big boy armor.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of shit here. And even at that point when we got started, I made sure that the guy who was carrying my extra round, knew how to, reload it while it was on my shoulder, and just save time so I didn't have to go fumbling for a round. But once I saw the size of the map and I saw what we were doing for, because 2-4 is a weapon squad. It's very rare that we go in and do door kicking ourselves. But the fact that we had a full sector, half of a sector to ourselves to basically kick in and try to clean house, it was like, wow, there's going to be way more stuff than we're used to, and it was a little daunting. But I think once we got into our rhythm, we were on our way. Just it's one target after the next. All right, what's the next big target? Where's the next MBT? Where's the next BMP?
Set that next field goal. Like, where are we going to next? All right, we got this done. Let's move on to the next one.
Right, and Sergeant Rowe has an affinity, like Sergeant Garcia did before, to basically this is our next target. This is our next target. Okay, Havoc 2's called us in. We're gonna go hunting for this. It keeps us fairly calm. We were doing well until we got into the town, and when we started door kicking, it came to a point where we were becoming overwhelmed with how many people were coming at us from how many different directions. Because the 240 Bravo gunners normally sitting behind cover all the time, shooting from a distance. This time, they're in there with their assistants, neck deep in it, no real cover except the wall that's right next to them. And the Jav and the Maws, they're also behind cover normally, but we were in the open, and not having that sense of protection was kind of just like a little panicky, I guess.
Yeah, and to cut you off here real quick, as you guys in the stream can see, I have paused the video. Now, the reason I have paused the video is because this was the initial point of contact, and it was with you guys. And the reason for that being, there was a tank out hiding in the trees, and you guys got eyes on it as the weapon squad. And however, you guys had eyes on it as the weapon squad. However, I also had eyes on you guys in the tank, because as I have used this phrase multiple times, you guys were skylining like a fucking Bob Ross painting, and I could clearly see a javelin sitting on top of someone's shoulders. Now, on top of that, imagine a 6-foot tall guy skylining. That's essentially what you guys are looking at in this picture. Those trucks are about 15 feet tall. So the truck being driven through the picture right now is a much larger target. So I fired that first round from the tank's main gun at them, and there was no reaction. They didn't start running. I was going to fire the second round at them and hit them in the face. However, I then seen a nice big fat juicy target. That target being that gigantic cougar that is about to go rolling behind them. Now, I don't really fucking pat myself on the back too often as a Zeus. However, taking a shot with an MBT at just over a click on a moving truck, and I smoked that motherfucker like it was the finest cigar you have ever seen. And that truck was immediately fucked. And then you guys ended up getting the round out that killed the tank, which at the time I thought was a Jav because I had seen the Jav on someone's shoulder. But it turns out it was actually a Maws shot. So who took that Maws shot on that first MBT, Patty?
That was Sergeant Thomas.
Sergeant Thomas, who is almost famous for his long-range Maws shots. There was actually an operation quite a while back where myself and Drum were filling in, and you guys probably remember that we were sitting next to one of those attack boats. We had went out and basically borrowed the attack boat for the GMG that was mounted on the front of it. Well,
you were with you
yeah.
were with me that one.
And this BMP ended up showing up and basically had me and Drum pinned down. We could not get out from behind the boat. And Thomas saved our ass. He took a shot with the Maws that was, I forget what the hell it was. It was like 1,400 meters with the Maws. It was a fucking hell of a shot, and he smoked that thing. And that's what he did here again. It was a 1,300 meter shot with the Maws, which isn't maximum range for that thing in real life, but in Arma, that's a long fucking shot at 1,300 meters with the Maws. And he hit that thing, ended up disabling most all of the components. The turret immediately went dead. But I didn't mind because it was tit for tat. I had already taken out one of their gun trucks, and they had a whole lot less gun trucks than I had armor. Now, once that happened, once that tank started opening up, that's when all hell kind of broke loose. Immediately, we started, ranging in shots for artillery. I started telling infantry, react to contact with that. Infantry started moving in on them. So that initial contact, that tank getting blown up, from that point on, you guys were in pretty much heavy contact the rest of the night. It didn't slow down until the very end. So honestly, the one thing I want to mention is that I was amazed by the end of the operation that you guys did not need a resupply. You guys probably did need a resupply, but you never got a resupply. And at no point in time did I hear too much bitching about being black on ammo. There was, requests for picking up enemy AT and stuff, which is fairly normal. But you guys never got a resupply. Myers, how were you guys doing, like, supply-wise? Like, did you really need a resupply, or were you guys doing all right?
Oh, we were doing okay. I drilled it into my guys to control your rate of fire, especially that we were pretty far out when we started the engagement. So our M4s were pretty much not too useful. You can see now in the video these couple squads you sent in, they got smoked by the supporting, like 2-4, 2-3. They pretty much dealt with most of the infantry. We dealt with a couple guys, but I don't even think I didn't give any of my sword gunners belts that I carry for them. But no, we were pretty good.
And that's surprising with how heavy the contact was for you guys. And I know you were on the right flank because there was a couple of times that I pretty much fucking shot you in the face. So you guys immediately started moving directly down the road, you and 2-1. And then I'm guessing it was the supporting assets were the guys that were over on the left flank, correct?
Yeah.
So you guys started moving down the road towards the roadblock that you guys are looking at now, where I took control of this BTR and just started firing the cannon blindly kind of through the trees and stuff. Not so much to hit them. I didn't expect to hit them at all, but more so they knew that there was a fucking piece of armor down there. And then I took control of this BMP to also do the same thing. To let them know, like, hey, there's shit down there. And you found that out fairly quickly, because I remember you coming over platoon net, letting them know that there's cannons and shit firing at you down on the road. And then the BMP that I'm in now, I ended up moving because infantry started getting close, and I was trying to get it to move up and engage the infantry in the trees, but it took too goddamn long, and then they were right on top of it. So then I tried getting it to run away, and of course the infantry ended up fucking shooting it pretty much right in the ass as it tried to run away. And those guys up in the trees on the hills and stuff, the supporting assets, they started getting chewed up by mortars and artillery, because we had one mortar pit of 3 tubes, and then we had a D30 battery of 3 guns. So they started getting chewed up pretty good from IDF. And you guys pushing down the road, eventually you ended up making it to this roadblock that you guys are looking at in the video now. And when you got to the roadblock, another fun surprise opened up on you. And that fun surprise was an AGS-30 mounted in the window of a building, which you guys seen much earlier in the video. It was an absolute asshole of a spot to put that AGS-30. I knew it was going to cause some fucking havoc, and here is me lighting them up with the BMP-2. But I knew that AGS-30 was in a nasty spot. I mentioned it multiple times in the stream. And when you were at the roadblock, I opened up on you guys with that AGS-30, and you immediately thought it was autocannon fire from some type of armor. And we had talked about it afterwards. And the whole reason for that being is because you were not expecting a GMG to be mounted inside of a building shooting through a window. So it definitely caused some confusion for you there. And the only reason it stopped firing is because it ran out of ammo. I couldn't shoot at you guys anymore. But what was it like for you in that roadblock when those grenades started hitting?
Honestly, I'll admit I didn't do my best job as a squad leader because fucking confusion and panic set in. I could hear the impacts, and I was like, right, that's an autocannon. That's got to be a Tunguska or a ZSU somewhere. So, me and Garcia were chilling that road, but we tried to we were like, right, it's not over here. I can't see anything. We haven't got anything on thermals. What is hitting us right now? And then I was just kind of like, I was stuck. I was like, I don't know what's hitting us. I was like calling on platoon. I was like, does air assets, can they see anything? And nothing really came back. And then I was like, right, we need to move then because I can't see the ZSU, whatever it is. I was just dead set on it being a Zeus cannon because that's what it sounded like to me.
And you just wanted to get the fuck out of there because you knew obviously it had your position fixed. So, that is exactly 100% correct. Like, your position is fucked. Move to a different fucking position. Like, that's all you can really do. If you don't know where something is engaging you from, but it's engaging you, just fucking move somewhere else. That's the best thing you can do.
Yeah, right. And in hindsight, where I moved my squad to was not the right place. I should have gone over to the supporting assets and fucked that position altogether because I've actually
that was the valley of death in there.
Yeah, I actually went back in game and looked at where we went, trying to map it out in my head, and I was looking at where I moved my guys, and I was like, well, if the fucking thing can hit us there, it's definitely gonna be able to hit us there. I was like, yeah, kind of got a bit pissed off at myself for that, but
yeah. It was definitely, I had that whole valley fixed with multiple gun emplacements, vehicles, all kinds of shit. Because of the hopes that, you guys would come down through that valley. And at least a part of the task force did. You're a part of the task force. Now, that being said, as was asked there in chat by Ty, I believe there was 10 KIA in the operation. I'm not positive, but it was somewhere right around 10 KIA, which is a pretty high number, especially for you guys. Task Force Bravo, it's not very often that you guys end up with KIAs, especially that many. So how was that for you? Like, were you getting word during the operation that, so-and-so's KIA and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I heard it up, saying we got mascots here, we got people down there, and then obviously because I was on the other side, I didn't really notice, and when I went over to help 2-2, it was we got them all back up and we consolidated, and then I had my series of mascazers, and throughout my series, despite what I was thinking, no one went down. I think that was down to me running around like a lunatic, just stabbing people with epi, just being like, medic, yeah, I've got no CLS, I need to get my mic up. Around, jammed in with a stick, was like, you're still pretty messed up. You need to
right
bandage yourself. And I was watching him, and he was bandaging himself and going unconscious, and I was like bandaging him and pushing epi, and I was like, right, I need to go over and get someone with CLS up. And at the same time, 2-2 had a bit of an accident as well. I don't know what hit them, but their CLS was down, their medic was down. I was like, I was just running around like a lunatic with their medicine, trying to wake people up.
And that's after you guys cleared out that large white building where I had that AGS-30. That's when you guys pushed up onto that hilltop and had the monumental clusterfuck that was there. And what ended up having you guys pinned down was a BMP-3 that had a great sight line across that valley. And as soon as you guys popped your head up over that small knoll, it just started fucking wreaking havoc over in that direction. And it tore you guys up pretty goddamn good. And honestly, I'm amazed that you didn't have any KIA over there. Because like you said, you had, 2 or 3 mass gases in a matter of like 10 minutes. So that was incredibly lucky. And
I was just fucking determined for no one to die. I really maxed myself out. Like, I was like sweating at the end of it. I was like, right, is everyone up? Are we all good? And then it happened again, and I was like, we're gonna have no fucking blood left by the end of this, and then managed to get everyone back up again. It wasn't until later on in the operation, which we'll talk about a little bit later, I'm sure, where we actually had 4 of us eventually went KIA.
Yeah, and that's and as you guys just seen on that rooftop there, I had a fuck ton of igloo chairs set up all around the town, as well as multiple different AAA vehicles and stuff around the town. Unfortunately, they did not have this desired effect, and I talked about it afterwards with Soto, that we need to do something to work on that, because the AA threat was nowhere near what it should have been, given the amount of vehicles and igloo chairs and troopers and stuff that I had down. Air assets did still have a rough time with it, but they were able to still complete fire missions and stuff, which they shouldn't have been able to. They did still take a shit ton of missile launches. Soto said it was like 20 plus igloos he had launched at them. But with the amount of AA I had down in that town, they shouldn't have been able to get anywhere fucking near it. And had that been the case, had air assets not been able to get in there and take out some of those armor assets, and different things that you guys were dealing with, this mission would have been even harder. Because air assets did a lot of fucking work Sunday night. A lot of work. However, at the same time, obviously with the amount of armor that was in the town, Patty, you guys had to have been working your asses off, just running around like chickens with no heads, trying to find all this armor and kill it, right?
Yeah, we were posted up on that hill next to one of the large white buildings by the Bay Area. And from there, we were taking out, Zeus cannons, BMPs, BTRs. I'm fairly certain we hit a Tunguska at one point, too. But it was
Good
just
chance.
a lot of
There was
mix.
a couple of them.
There was a good mix of, Maz and Jav shots going out. Basically, Sergeant Rowe had both of us next to him and said, all right, I've got, a BMP, Charlie, take it. I've got a MBT at this point, Delta, take that. By that point, the Maz gunner was ready to go again. So it's almost, talking rockets at that point. Where it was,
right.
Picking up what was next and what was necessary. And there was actually one shot I was supposed to take, but for whatever reason, the Javelin couldn't get a heat signature lock on it, and we had to employ the Maz to take the shot. And he, Thomas takes shots to an extreme almost, because I think that was one of his long shots, because that's why the Jav was tasked with it originally, and he pinned it right on the head.
Yeah, you guys definitely had a hell of a time, because there was a lot of armor in and around that town. And going into, obviously, like you said, going into the operation, when you hear Platoon HQ ask for a Javelin, like, you're getting into the shit pretty bad. Now, that being said, as we talked about earlier, Javelin has, a limited amount of rounds that you can carry with it. So really, you have to task the Jav with taking on the big boys, the real big threats, because the Javelin is going to kill it. No questions asked. So, like you said, things like the MBTs, BMP2s, BMP3s, stuff like that, that's the shit that will task Javelins with taking out. Something that we know is a huge threat, and that we know the Javelin will kill it with a single hit, no problem.
Or, a helicopter that, Thunder can't get a tone on.
Yeah. Yeah. That happens too. And also, real quick, Assault, thank you very much for that 5-month resub. Greatly appreciate the support to the channel, brother. Now, continuing on from there, you guys finally kind of almost hitting the walls of the city, if you will. I know, Myers, you guys on the south side of town hit those office buildings and started moving through and clearing those and so on and so forth. And then this is also another thing that we talked about that night after the operation. Once you went to leave kind of that area with the office buildings, you made one hell of a rookie mistake. And what was that?
I moved through an open field. Oh, firstly, the entire office building wasn't clear, but I mean, there were people inside rooms that we couldn't get access to. But
Yeah.
the biggest mistake was moving my guys out of out of the office building into open ground, and not checking behind us, not checking the balconies, because I was under the assumption that the buildings were clear, but.
And as a result of that, you guys got fucking smoked basically out in the street. And right now you guys are looking at me shooting Myers with a AGS-30.
Yeah.
So you guys got smoked out in the street. And you said a couple of you did end up going KIA from that? Or didn't?
Yeah, we did, 4 of us. And it was actually a really horrible situation to be in. And it watching it unfold, when you're unconscious, it really, it just made me
that just makes
upset.
it worse, yeah.
Yeah, because I went down with 2 of the guys, and I saw my medic looking at me, and I was like, in my head, I was like, don't fucking do it. I was like, don't do it, and he popped the smoke and he beelined it out to me, and he got to my body, and he just got fucking smoked. He got 5 or 6 rounds in his back as he was trying to bandage me, and then I was like, I just saw it unfold, and I was just like, not like this, like don't do this, and then Sergeant Redmond, platoon Mike, absolute legend of a guy, came out, realized where the rounds were coming from, did a 180 and killed the guy who was standing on that balcony. But at that point, it was me and my guys, we've been down for a good few minutes.
Yeah, it was already too late.
I could feel, I really kind of blamed myself for that. And I was quite angry about it, the fact that I would made that mistake, due to me making bad calls, 4 of my guys died. It was it's a learning curve for me. And we did a lot of stuff that mission that I think just was kind of mistakes. We moved through 2 open fields at one point with little to no smoke cover, and we were with 2-6. And that should have been called up to platoon saying, hey, this isn't a great route. We took a lot of fire as well, I think, from just small arm fire
from
moving
everywhere.
through an open field. Just it was a bit of a shit show moving to that field, but that should have been called up to the platoon saying, hey, we're not doing this, we need to find an alternative route because there's no way we're getting through this field.
Yeah, and that's, anybody that watched the stream or anybody looking at the video now, even with some of them dead, that town was just absolutely crawling with infantry guys in almost every fucking building. So, throughout the entire stream, I was saying, this is just the start of it. Like, the real work begins when they get into the town, because I knew that was going to be the roughest part. Obviously, dealing with all this armor and stuff that was trying to repel you, that was rough. But going into the town, and when I tell the guys in OSA that MOUT, military operations and urban terrain, is the most dangerous thing we do, like, I'm not saying that lightly. It is hands down the most dangerous and most unforgiving type of operation that we do. When you go into a town, especially the size of this, and I said this in the stream, and I'll reiterate it here, an operation like this, an undertaking of a town this size, would not be done by a single platoon. Like, you would have an entire infantry company with armor support and shit like that taking a town this size in real world. Obviously, we can't do that, which is why it's kind of scaled down a little bit more. But still, it doesn't make it any easier, because when you move into a town like this with hundreds of buildings, thousands of windows and doors, and rifles that can be pointed out any one of them, not only does your head need to be on a fucking swivel, but all of you have to have your heads on a swivel, because at any point in time, you can be taking shots from 3-4 directions all at the same time. And especially in Arma, it's not always easy to know exactly where that shot's coming from. And it's much like that in real life. When you're in an urban setting and you have a rifle go off, you can be complete 180 in thinking of where that round came from because of the reverb off the buildings and shit like that. It's incredibly difficult to know where those shots are coming from. I mean, that's the whole reason we have systems now mounted on gun trucks that will call out a sniper's position when he fires, is, it removes that human element of hearing that reverb and thinking it's in the wrong direction. So again, you guys moving into the town, you basically just start getting hit from all directions. And Patty, like you said earlier, weapons guys don't generally go in and kick in doors. That's not really the thing of a weapons squad. And you have 2 former weapons squad leaders here. I myself, I still trained my guys very rigorously on mount because 1, it's one of my favorite things to train on, and 2, because those situations do arise every now and then. What about you, Avery? When you were running a weapons squad, did you guys ever train on mount and like clearing buildings and shit like that?
Oh yeah, all the time. We did have like stricter, I wouldn't say stricter, like dumber SOPs when it came to clearing out buildings as weapons. We had people tell us, "Oh, you gotta pull out your pistol."
Yeah.
That dumb shit. Basically,
for the 240, I can understand from a realistic standpoint because you don't want to take it's very difficult in real world to take a 240 into a building. But like that stood for like ARs and shit too back then. Like they were telling automatic riflemen to take out their fucking pistol instead of going in and clearing a room with a fucking 200 round belt fed fucking light machine gun. But yeah, it was definitely very different back then for weapons squads. And now, what about yourself, Patty? Do you guys train on CQB a decent amount, or is it something you guys don't really mess with?
We do mount training. Actually, that's something that prior to Garcia taking on a higher position, that was something that Garcia loved to do, was mount training. And
hey, he's just trying to bite my style.
He's instilled it us pretty solidly. In a scenario where, like with the mission, normally those things we're split off from the rest of the rest of the platoon, and we're on like a hill or something just providing overwatch, and I think that's made us a little complacent. But I mean, we do train, but it's not very often in op that we're being utilized for door kicking.
Right. And once you guys got into the town, obviously, like you said earlier, you guys had your own sector basically that you were tasked with clearing. How did that clearing go for you guys? Was it kind of what you expected going into the town, or was it a little hotter than what you thought it was going to be?
It was what we expected going into the town, because I mean, as big as the town is, the buildings, the street that we were clearing, there was a lot of space between buildings, and there were a lot of courtyards. So like we were walking into narrow bottlenecks that was opening up into large areas, and we were moving through it fairly quickly, to my surprise actually, because I was thinking that we were going to be, going through building to building, but we weren't really taking contact from inside of many of the buildings. A lot of them were tasked outside. We really got hammered on though when we hit the main courtyard just outside the circle.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of us got pinned down from just, I guess, MGs that were sitting and mounted in windows, all pointed into the same direction into that courtyard. And that was actually the point where I went KIA, and 2-4 had to continue on without me.
Yeah, and I actually had, as you guys got into that point, kind of basically right there to that main courtyard where kind of that HQ building and stuff was, at that point, I had started ungarrisoning guys out of the buildings, so they would start running out of the buildings to engage you guys. And I had somebody question that in the stream, asking why I was ungarrisoning guys. Because obviously, you're doing CQC, you want to kick in doors, you want to breach some buildings and stuff like that. But the thing is, oftentimes, at least in Arma, guys, they know, obviously, that there's a garrison command. And when you garrison guys, they're going to stay in that building. They're not going to fucking move. So they don't expect the AI to come outside of the building. So guys feel safe just sitting outside of a building. They don't worry about the AI walking out that front door and engaging them, which is exactly why I ungarrison troops when guys get close to buildings like that. So the AI does come running out that front door right in your face and start engaging you. Because then guys have to think about something. then they have to maintain that security and go, oh shit, at any second, a guy that was firing at us from inside that building could come walking out the front door or the back door and come up behind us. So that's why I'll ungarrison troops when guys get close like that. And did you, Myers or Patty, did you guys experience that at all? Did you have any guys come running out of fucking buildings near you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you would have. You were more in it than I mean, I got back, so I got Phoenix dropped me and a couple of guys back off certain guys. And so by the time I kind of got in, we did do a decent amount of mount, but it was more just like clear that. A couple of guys went in, few shots, and they came back out, and that was it. We didn't really do that much heavy mount. I think like 2-4 and 2-3 and 2-1 did more of it than I did.
Right, and that's actually something that I commented on in the stream, was when that first reinsert bird came in, that first Phoenix, it was absolutely perfect. Like, I didn't think Phoenix would be able to get in there at all with all the AA that I had. In actuality, they shouldn't have been able to. But Pilot did a hell of a job getting that bird in there, because as soon as he was close to the AO, he dropped that thing down to the deck. I mean, immediately. And he was flying in pretty much right along the roadway, and he came over top of the power lines, dropped down pretty much level with the power lines, and flew in and dropped you guys off. And it was an absolute textbook reinsert from a Blackhawk. And I commended him like a motherfucker on the stream, because it was one of the best reinserts I had ever seen. But yeah,
I mean,
go ahead.
Yeah, so in the bird itself, we waved off or once or twice, I can't remember. I think we waved off twice because it was too hot to go in. We were taking spikes from all over the show. But when we did eventually go in, it was I think it was Lieb who was flying.
I believe so, yes.
It was
so,
yeah. Lieb.
Yeah, it was. He was super low. We got in there and then I saw it and I was like, "Is that the LZ?" And he was like, "Yeah." And we were down and out and gone, and I was like, "Jesus, that was fast." As soon as he kind of got the go-ahead to, okay, try it this time, and he didn't get any spikes, yeah, he got it down.
Yeah, he got in there and got the fuck out real quick.
Yeah.
Like I said, it was definitely nice to see. It was a textbook insert from the Blackhawk. But you guys continued to push through the town. And as Patty said, you guys were moving a lot quicker than what I expected you to. Despite the amount of guys that were in all of the buildings and stuff, you guys did a damn good job when it came to actually clearing and maintaining that high tempo that we always talk about. You guys didn't really get bogged down at all once you got into the town, which I definitely expected. And once you got into the town and had gotten it mostly cleared out, we sent in a few reinforcements here and there. And at one point, I had sent in a hip and had them fast rope guys right by the square. And this was one of the funniest things I had ever seen in Arma, because the hip comes in and starts fast roping. And 2-4, it was like fucking Christmas Day for 2-4's 240 gunners, because they seen that thing sitting stationary and they immediately unleashed hellfire onto this thing with those 240s, and they took out the tail rotor. And anybody that's seen the stream knows I was laughing like a giddy little bitch, because that thing started doing a death spin, but the AI was able to maintain his altitude, but he was just spinning non-stop counterclockwise, and the guys were still on the ropes and continued to go down the ropes. Like, more guys hopped out and started going down the ropes. And if any of you guys have seen that carnival ride with the swings that just go way out there and spin around in a circle, it looked like that carnival ride, only it was ran by Satan himself, because that thing was spinning around like a maniac, and those guys would have been like bouncing off the walls of the buildings and shit like that. It was all kinds of horrible. Luckily, Thunder put those guys out of their misery. He came in on a gun run on this helicopter and smoked the thing. And I actually remember hearing 2-4 radio up on Platoon Net that, Thunder just stole our Thunder and killed the helicopter. And that's when Platoon HQ come back and said, well, that's what Thunder does.
A lot of props to Sergeant Rowe on that, because while myself and Charlie were firing at the guys with our M4s, he immediately said 240s on the tail rotor. And that's, I think, why he was a little disappointed that Thunder came in, because he was expecting, a crashed helicopter from hitting the building.
Right. Yeah, I was amazed that the AI was able to keep that thing somewhat level, despite the tail rotor just being completely gone. But yeah, again, it was one of the funniest things I've ever seen in Arma. And then after that, I sent in another hip, and I was like, all right, well, I can't have him fast rope because 2-4 is just going to fucking shoot him in the ass. So I was like, all right, well, I'll have these guys paradrop. So I have them paradrop in, and all of them were dead before they hit the ground because they were in chutes, and everybody just fucking laid waste to them while they were still falling. It did not work as well as I had expected at all. And I know there's always some confusion when it comes to this. When it comes to guys in parachutes. People always get this confused when it comes to engaging guys in parachutes because of the old World War II, pilots would not engage other pilots that had bailed out. It was basically an honor thing. If you seen a guy in a chute, you didn't engage him. Same goes for the daylight bombing raids when they would take out one of our bombers and there'd be 10 guys bailing out of a B-17. German pilots wouldn't engage them because they considered it dishonorable to engage pilots or, bomber crews in a parachute. That still holds true. You cannot engage a pilot or a flight crew in a parachute. You can't engage them. That rule does not apply for paratroopers. Unfortunately for me, Sunday. So yeah, that does not apply to paratroopers, which is generally why, paratroopers are dropped further behind lines. But that being said, they got fucking destroyed. And that was pretty much it for the reinforcements. By that point, I was, we were already getting kind of close to time, and I was like, I'm not even going to bother sending anything else in because it's just going to get fucking destroyed. And you guys were pretty much at the end of mopping up the town, and had pretty much everything secure at that point as we watch another squad take a mass cast from the BMP3.
That's me.
So... Yeah, that's yet again Myers getting shot in the face, which, if you guys haven't noticed, that's kind of a reoccurring theme for tonight, is Myers getting shot in the face by large caliber weaponry.
That's the third one. I don't actually remember it shooting that many times. I think I may have fucking passed out with blind rage. I was very fucking angry when we got hit twice for the second time.
And yes, as you guys are asking in chat there, that Ka-52 that got taken down, that was a fucking Sidewinder that had that crazy fucking flight path. How that thing was able to take that Ka-52 down, I have no idea. Because I remember in chat somebody pointing out that, had that been real life, as you can see, that missile there, had that happened in a rocket or a missile isn't capable of maneuvering like that in real life. In no way. As somebody said in my chat during the stream, it would fucking rip itself apart trying to maneuver like that in real life. But the Jav fired at it as well? Is that correct?
Yeah, I was given the order from 2-4 top and from LT that we were to fire the Jav because apparently, from what I had heard, and I'd gone back to your stream listening to air traffic, that the A-10 couldn't get toned with the Sidewinder, and that was the point where the Jav was called to make a shot, and I know I fired it off, and I watched it go through, but I couldn't see what actually hit it because I guess the Sidewinder and the Jav were in there at the same time. So I'm still up in the air about if the Maverick hit it, or the Sidewinder, or if the Javelin rocket hit it.
I am clipping my view of it, so hold on.
Up in the air. You're a weapons guy. You know goddamn well you're like, yeah, the Jav hit it first. Fuck Thunder. Jav hit it. No, we took it down. No, Thunder didn't get it.
It's on my report that I took it down, so until otherwise stated, 2-4 has 2 helicopter shots this operation.
Yeah, I was going to say, because that's not the first time 2-4 has taken down a helicopter with a Javelin missile. And the last time it happened, I had a really good view of it, and it actually almost took Thunder out as well. Anybody that's seen that bit of video from my stream that night, I had a great view of it, and that missile passed a couple meters underneath Thunder's wing on its way to that hind. So that was pretty cool to watch.
Soto still gives me shit for that.
Yeah. But back to the mission itself, again, you guys were able to clear through that town a lot quicker than what I expected you to be able to. I expected the mission to be, going until 22:30 or so, but we still wrapped up right around 2200, which again was a surprise. And that was pretty much it. You guys were eventually able to fully clear out the town. There was like one or two stragglers left, and I think there was two stragglers left, and I sent one out of the building, and Brewer took control of the other one, and those two guys had probably upwards of 600 rounds punched into them. And I was on my stream saying, they're dead, guys, they're dead. Just stop shooting. They're dead. So they were definitely looking like Swiss cheese. But they were the last two guys left. And that was it. I sent the message to Drum, who was Task Force Commander, and told him, mission complete whenever you're ready. And that was it. You guys successfully took the town, and it was a fucking tough mission from start to finish, as I knew it was going to be when I was building it. I set out to make that a very, very rough mission. And you guys were able to get it done, despite the amount of mass cases and the KIAs that you did have, you were able to get it done. But for you, Myers, what was kind of your takeaway from the mission? Did you enjoy it? Did you learn some shit that you need to work on? What was kind of your thoughts on the end of it?
I learned a lot from this mission. I've been for those who know the way I squad lead, I'm a very aggressive squad lead. I want to move. I want to keep moving and moving and moving and bounding through objectives. And this was an occasion where that shit isn't going to work. You cannot, take a mass cast and then 2 minutes later, like, right, we're moving here and then we're moving there. It's not going to work. It was a difficult mission. I think a couple of my guys, obviously in the end of the day, looking back on it, I did enjoy it, not as much as I'd enjoy it if we just, absolutely owned it and,
Yeah, but in hindsight, it's always more enjoyable than when you're actually getting shot in the face.
Yeah, when it was happening, I was just not in a great place. I was very upset with what was happening, and me and Garcia actually had a bit of a private conversation during the mission. Like, I took him aside and I was like, it was actually when we took the second or the third mass cars there, I took him and I was like, we can't fucking do this. Like I said to him, I was like, look at the state of my guys. We have little to no medical left. I don't know if we should call it here. And he was like, yeah, I don't know. And I was just kind of looking at the incoming, I was hearing 2-4 declaring, I think, did 2-4 declare a mass cars, Paddy? Maybe 2-4.
Oh yeah, we went down twice, I believe, as a mass cast, but we're back up.
Yeah, and I saw, I think it was my mic, Sergeant Redmond was down, 2-4 called a mass cars, and I was standing there with Garcia, just kind of like, in the wake of it all, after the fire started to calm down, I was like, I don't know if we can do this. And we pushed through, and it, we did end up taking a couple of KIAs, which I was really not happy about. It really upsets you when people go KIA. It's never happened before in my squad. I think that's my first ever KIA within the unit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think it's that's the first time I've ever actually gone KIA in a mission.
Oh, good. I popped your cherry.
Yeah, which is really, I've been here for a year and a bit now. And as a squad leader, that's the first time any of my guys have ever gone KIA during a mission.
And what about you, Patty? What was kind of your takeaway from the operation? Did you learn anything from it? Did you enjoy it?
I enjoyed it. I feel like 2-4 was fairly successful in, completing our leg. We definitely suffer from getting bogged down. It's probably one of the biggest shortfalls of us when we're constantly on the move. Once we're in position, we're pretty solid, but getting into place is something that takes a little more time for us because we're just trying to make sure that armor's taken care of for the rest of the platoon. And I think that causes us to potentially be, cannon fodder for, mortars and any kind of armor that rolls up onto us instead of anybody else. But no, I thought the mission was fairly good, and if anything, it's taught us that we need to work on our movements and we need to work on a little bit more mount when it comes to those large areas, going through courtyards like that. Like, I'm fairly certain watching your video here that there was, as 2-4 was going through a tunnel, that there was a machine gunner and a rifleman on the balcony above the exit of the tunnel, and I think that's what hit us from behind. So it's like trying to make sure we're watching all sectors as we're moving along the edge of the walls there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like I said earlier, dealing with a town that size, it is never going to go easy, and you're never going to make it through it cleanly. You can't expect to go into a situation like that and have no casualties. It's not going to happen. Whether that be in Arma or in real world, it's just not on a scale like this. Are you going to be able to do that without any casualties? So that being said, again, that was the end of Task Force Bravo and a successful mission. So moving on from that, what I want to talk about tonight is what it takes for us as a unit to go into a deployment, to go into the missions, what kind of planning goes into them, how they get completed, how we wrap them up, so on and so forth. Just kind of give you guys a step-by-step as to how we go about getting to what you guys actually see on video. Because there is a lot of not necessarily backroom, but there's a lot of planning that goes into all of this long before any of it even happens. And, I've mentioned a couple times on streams that, this deployment that we're currently in, Crimson Moon, we began planning this last December. So almost a year ago is when we first started planning this operation, or this deployment. So it's, granted, it's not non-stop planning. It's not every single day, okay, we're going to do this, it's stuff that takes place over time, and then when we get closer to us actually starting the deployment, the planning ramps up a lot. But, that's the amount of, or I guess kind of the not necessarily foresight, but the pre-planning that has to go into something this large, because you have to keep in mind, when we go into a deployment, we're going to be in that deployment for anywhere from 6, 8, 9, 10 months, and we have to plan all of that out. Granted, at first, it's very, very rough planning, but we still have to do it. And Sai, to answer your question right now, as far as how many deployments are in the works or ready, right now, there is no deployment, like actual mission deployment that we're working on yet. That'll start probably during Winter Stand Down is when we'll start working on the next stuff.
We've started.
Yeah, we've thrown around a few ideas and stuff like that. But as far as like stuff being ready, set in stone, nothing is set yet. We're not at that point yet. We still have all of Winter Stand Down to go through, which is really, Winter Stand Down is really good for us because it gives us that time to do a lot of that planning. Now, going into this deployment, and this deployment is what we're going to use as a basis. As I said, we started planning it back in December. Us at Unit HQ, as well as our then battle captain, which was Aston, who, after going to reserves, was then, the job fell to Myers. So Myers does a lot of the work when it comes to operational planning and stuff like that. But going into this deployment, first job was, what map do we want? Okay, so we'll generally get a list of maps together, 3, 4, 5, 6, however many maps, and then set about testing. Okay, so then it's a matter of, all right, go test this map. How's the performance on it? How does the AI react on it? How many areas do we have for objectives? How large is it? Is it big enough for an entire deployment, or is it something that we can only use for a couple cycles? Stuff like that. And that'll usually go on for a month, 2 months, possibly even longer, depending upon how many maps and all of that. And generally that initial list of maps will come from either in a conjunction with S3 and S4, and they'll bring the list to us at Unit HQ and say, okay, these are the maps that we have that we've tested. These maps work for this, and this. We can use these maps for this, and this, so on and so forth. This is our testing. This is our findings. Then they, wait for us to approve it. And us at Unit HQ will sit down and say, okay, I like this map, we can do this on it. I like this map, we can do this on it, so on and so forth. And then we'll come to a decision on which one we are going to use. Now, once we make a final decision on what the deployment map is going to be, so in this case, it was NAPF. I personally really wanted NAPF because it was A, out of the fucking desert, and B, it's a very, very good looking map. However, we did not realize that it was going to have the performance issues that it has in the towns. That never came up in testing. Unfortunately, it does, so we know that now, but we were still able to get it done, even with those issues. But once we decide on a map, it then goes off to the battle captains, and they start their planning for the actual deployment. Now, they still work fairly close with Unit HQ as far as the broad stroke storylining of the deployment. We try to stay somewhat hands-off because we don't want to know every single little detail that's going to happen. But we still, have to be involved in the planning somewhat. But Myers, for you as a battle captain, once you get approval on a map, what is kind of the first thing you do? Once you know, okay, this is the map we're going to use, what's your first thing to start doing?
Yeah, so back when it was myself and Aston, we get together, we have a big old battle captain meeting, and we sit there for however long we have. Normally it's a couple hours. Get a cup of tea and we brainstorm. We talk about what we want to see, what we want to do, how we want to do it. And then we kind of leave those meetings and we're like, right, so I'm going to post. So this is the general, storyline. We want to do this and this and this. The key points that we always have in every deployment. And then we're like, right, let's go away and let's write up some context and, how this whole deployment came to fruition and, all of that stuff. And then,
and that's when it gets handed off to S2 for the media guys to start ramping up the stories leading into the deployment, which anybody in the unit or anybody that, follows the unit very closely as far as the newsroom knows, we'll start putting out news stories of what's happening in a region to start giving guys an idea of where we're going to be going, which is a really cool thing from an immersion standpoint. You can start seeing news stories come out of such and such country, and you're like, oh, well, shit, we're currently in our FTX cycle, looking like we're going to be going there to whoop some ass. That being said, this deployment, we changed that up a little bit because we did put out news stories, and we did the same thing for Righteous Eagle, in that Righteous Eagle was kind of an emergency thing that we just threw in there for the guys to have some fun. But the news stories weren't all inclusive to NAP. We threw out multiple news stories to kind of throw it off for the guys. So nobody knew, at least right away, nobody knew exactly where we were going. Because I believe the first set of stories was, like 4 or 5 stories that we put out initially, Myers?
Yeah, we had in the back room though, we probably had we had 3 or 4 maybe solid ones that we were like, we can either go for either of these, and then we kind of nailed it down to the one we're on now.
Yeah. So again, we just kind of put those out there just to give the guys something to think about. So you guys go in and start storyboarding, like I said, the broad strokes of the campaign. Not necessarily this is what's going to happen this mission or this cycle, just, this is beginning, middle, end. All right, now we got to fill it in from there. And that's, when we actually get word we're going to get deployed, you guys will put out the redeployment order of us coming out of our training exercise, going into our next operational theater. Now, once that deployment order is out, that's when it really begins. That's when the deployment obviously starts, and that's when everything ramps up S3 on the S3 side of things, because that's when we got to start planning the actual missions themselves. So you guys will take the map and we'll get an overall battle map that will show us all of the entirety of the map, who controls what regions, so on and so forth, kind of like a miniature S2 brief. And we did that for the start of this deployment. Anytime that you guys do the ! mission command in my Twitch chat, that first link to that Google Docs is actually the link to the S2 brief that we gave all of the guys at the start of this deployment. We straight up sat down in Google Slides, went through all of the intel and stuff that we had on the region going into it and everything, and gave a shortened version of what you would get in a real S2 brief. And that was kind of the bastard child of myself and Shannon that wanted to go about implementing that, because it was something that we have experienced many times. So we wanted to give the guys that experience. While it doesn't do anything in game, it's really cool immersion wise, because that is something that you actually get. So we did the S2 brief, then we begin the deployment, and we're looking at this massive map with all these different areas controlled by different factions and stuff like that. This deployment, we had 2 factions rather than, well, actually we had 3 factions rather than just one. And what kind of planning goes into that first phase where we see all these different areas controlled by different stuff, and then we have the first set of objectives, basically just taking some ground, getting a foothold. What do you guys go through, Myers, as far as getting that first little bit going and deciding what the first objectives are going to be in that operation?
Normally, so with most deployments, we kind of get plopped down on this island. Myself and Aston, I think, I made the battle map for this, and we kind of planned out, and we were like, we want, factions over here, and we want them over there, and we kind of want the island to be kind of, in a bit of a power struggle. That's kind of what we saw, in the first bit of deployment. And normally the main objective for the first couple of weeks is always going to be whatever's near the base. So in terms of this one, it was the dam, if you remember back to the dam. That was the big thing for us, that's like PRNA, that was their big headquarters. And that was kind of where we needed to be at. That's what we wanted to do the first thing, and we needed to establish a foothold. And the best way to do that is eliminate one of their footholds, so we get a little bit more control in the islands. And we just look at areas with like big objectives. So the dam was one, the Western Airfield, which is now Airbase Minnesota, I believe. That was a second, big objective that would take a couple of weeks to get to. You can't instantly go to the dam and take it. There's going to be a couple cycles, maybe 2 cycles before, where you need to do this, take out a supply route, take out artillery, take out AAA, stuff like that.
Right, we have to kind of soften the area to get in there first.
Yeah.
And in case you guys don't understand what we're talking about, when we say a cycle, for us, a operational cycle is 2 weeks, because, we have our task forces offset every other week. They have an operation, but we have 3 task forces. So you have 1 operation on the first and third Sunday, and then you have 2 operations on the next weekend, because you have Task Force Charlie and then Task Force Bravo. So a single cycle for us consists of 2 weeks. So when they have to plan a cycle of operations, it's actually 3 operations that are being planned, and those are put out all at once. So we don't plan each individual week at a time. It's 2 weeks at a time that we plan for all 3 task forces. Now, when we go into the first cycle or whatever, and really going into this operation, when we were brainstorming it, I knew that I wanted it to be a fictional kind of southeastern, or not really southeastern, but basically a mock North Korea, to put it plainly. Because of the tensions that were rising in Korea, it was a very believable storyline. Now, at the time when we started this, way back when, this campaign started because of this fictional country of Napf and the enemy forces in it fired a ICBM and hit a Japanese airfield. And Japan being one of our strongest allies, we were sent to react. Now, I'm not going to call it necessarily intuition or ESP or anything, but a couple months after, the deployment starts, as a result of that, what do you know? North Korea fires a fucking ICBM right over the top of Japan and drops it in the ocean. So, I don't know.
Funnily enough, where that missile landed wasn't actually far from one of the islands me and Aston were speaking about. We were like, well, this sounds, off the coast of Japan. It's kind of off on its own. And where that missile landed was actually not far from the island.
Yeah, so it was definitely, I'll say it was definitely weird when that happened, because we were all sitting like, holy shit, like we planned this out fucking months and months ago, and now it's happening in real life. Wow. But yeah, so we went into the first operational cycle, and very quickly, I must thank you, Bezo, for that 10 spot, brother. Thank you for the continued support to the channel. You are definitely appreciated. We go into the first cycle, and as we said, it's just kind of a land grab at that point. It's going to be stuff close to the base in preparation to getting to that first major objective, which, like we said, was the dam, it was multiple cycles before we got to the dam. And that being because, like Meyer said, you can't just go directly to, that first big objective. We have to, not only do we have to pace out the deployment, but it would just be unrealistic that we just show up in country and we're already kicking in their front door. That's not how things work. But going into the deployment, I honestly don't even know this, or at least I don't think I know this, but there wasn't a set end date for this deployment, correct? There was just a general idea where we said, well, we want it to end around this time, but we didn't have like a set number of cycles or anything like that for the deployment, correct?
Yeah, correct. We kind of ballparked it. We said we want to, this is where the deployment's going to end, is in location on the map, like this is where it's going to finish. And but that was, that was it. There was a couple possibilities we were throwing around the back room. But one of my favorites was NAF actually has a winter version.
Yeah, we'll take it into the winter.
I was kind of throwing it around. I was like, hey, how about we transition over to winter, the winter map?
Yeah,
I would have liked that.
Yeah, and that would have been really cool. If we didn't have winter stand down, especially, it would have been cool. The only downside to it being that, even in Arma, you end up running into the same thing where it's just like, I want to be done with this. Like, I'm tired of looking at the same fucking place. I'm tired of looking at the goddamn sand. I'm tired of looking at goddamn trees, whatever. Like, after 10 months or however long, you're ready to get the fuck out of there. In which actually we're at, phase 10 for Crimson Moon. So that would be 20 weeks that we've been at it. So
6 months nearly now?
Yeah, so nearly 6 months that we've been in this operation, in this deployment, which is a long time for a deployment. This is a very long deployment at 6 months. But we knew that going in that it was going to be a long deployment. Like, I remember us discussing that multiple times, that, yeah, we want this to be, a longer deployment, because we did give the guys that emergency deployment with ORE. So we knew that we wanted this one to be fairly long and carry us around the time of winter stand down. Now, at this point, it's no secret, as the Warno was posted today, that we're wrapping it up. We're, at least from the Warno, we're looking at the last 3 objectives over this next phase, provided we're successful, which hopefully we are. Because if we fuck up, yeah, that could be bad. But bringing that up, the Warnos. As I said, the planning for the operational phases is every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks we get a Warno, generally on Wednesday. Actually, pretty much always on Wednesday. Myers is great about that. So on Wednesday afternoon, generally, the Warno will come out. A Warno is a warning order, which basically tells all of us, okay, this is what the next phase holds. We have objective A, B, C, and D to do, and then it's on us as task force commanders to decide which objectives each task force is going to do. So that's really where the planning starts from the infantry side of things, is we get that warno. Now, obviously, everybody can see that warno. From Unit HQ all the way down to fucking fire team members can see that warno. So they also get an idea of where we might be going, but they don't know which task force is going to be doing what. That's up to us as Unit HQ. So we get that on Wednesday, which is today, obviously. That comes out. Now, Thursday is when the planning meeting happens. So on Thursday evening, for, if it's the first week, it'll be Task Force Alpha's planning meeting. If it's the second week, it'll be Task Force Charlie and Task Force Bravo's planning meeting. Basically, each section lead, so we have platoon HQs, JTACs, Delta Company lead, 74th lead, Mortars lead, all get into a room. We'll sit down using a website known as Twiddler, which basically is like an online meeting thing where you can draw on pictures and shit like that. We'll take the map, put it on Twiddler, and then we'll start drawing our plan of attack. Who's going to be doing what? Who's, what air assets are going to be doing, where they're going to be hanging out, what way the platoon is going to be getting there, what route we're going to be taking, so on and so forth. And can, consist of anything from 5 minutes to 30 minutes. It's just some operations take longer to plan. And very quickly here, we have a couple of questions in chat. Would you mind if I named a character after you in a novel I plan to write? Only if you make him dashing and handsome. Then yes, I would be okay with that. And yes, in winter, we would not need winter gear, just some ugly-ass UCP. Yeah. So, that being said, we do the planning meeting, decide who's going to be doing what, so on and so forth. Everybody breaks from there and briefs their individual sections. Now, the platoon section leads, the platoon HQs, they then release what is known as an op order or an operation order, which will detail everything that we went over in the planning meeting with a little bit extra detail as far as what each individual squad is going to be doing, so on and so forth. So they will generally release that on Friday, maybe on Saturday. And that op word will generally, again, like I said, be fairly detailed, but not so goddamn detailed where it takes you, an hour to fucking read it. Now, once that op word drops, that's kind of where you guys come into play as squad leaders and stuff like that. And like Avery, you're in the planning meetings as a JTAC. So you already know kind of that behind the scenes of what we do in the planning meetings and so on. But going into planning meetings real quick, Avery, what is kind of your, what are you paying attention to? Like, what is kind of your area of responsibility when we go into a planning meeting?
Well, lately for me, it's been like focusing on terrain and just like the overall path that the enemy can take to us.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when it comes to rotary and fixed wing, and knowing their racetracks that they set during the planning meeting, which is the place where they tend to stay. Lately, it's been more to the south of our operations since we're moving up north of the island. But lately it's just been
basically
trying to find
where you can keep your airframes safe.
Yeah. And then also working with Havoc 4 is if like it's a defense mission, for instance, like pre-designated areas where we can set up a quick 5-line for Havoc 4 to get fire missions out and stuff like that.
Right. So going into a planning meeting, your entire thought process is, where can we pre-designate for Havoc 4 and where can I bring my air assets into the AO but keep them safe, and where do I have to worry about shit coming at us from? Because that's where you're going to be tasked with sending air assets to go kill it. And for those of you guys that don't really understand, when it comes to a JTAC, yes, they're on the ground with us, but those are their guys up in the air. JTACs are Air Force personnel, as are our A-10 pilots. And, obviously they also work with the helicopter pilots. But when it comes to the JTACs, they're just as close with air assets as what they are with us guys on the ground. So the safety of those airframes is their responsibility. It's not just the pilot. It's also the responsibility of the JTAC to not send them into a shit situation that they can't get out of. So get the planning meeting done. Op words go out from platoon HQs. Myers, as squad leader, when you see that op word come up, obviously you already somewhat know what's going on because you write the warno, but you don't know right away what each task force is going to be doing. Well, you do because we have to coordinate that so you can come up with other stuff. But when that op word comes out, what's kind of your first, what's your first step when you see that op word go out? Do you immediately send it to your guys and start, going over briefings and stuff like that? Or do you just wait until the operational briefing before?
Oh, no, so fortunately my squad trainings are Sundays, so they're either, they're on the same night. So, I'll send it to my guys, I'll put it in my squad thread saying, hey, here's the warno. Or here's the warno and the op word. Read both of them. Get familiar with the situation, look at what we're doing, I want you guys to know where we're meant to be. And then, during squad training, before we even begin training, I'll be like, hey, this is the op word, we're going to be doing this, we're mainly going to be looking at this, and this, so therefore squad training, we're going to be doing this.
Right, you train the guys based on what you're going to be doing that week.
Yeah, and I don't like to do, because, squad training's on Sunday, and then a couple hours later we got operations. The last thing I want to do is sit there in a 3.5 hour squad, 2 hour squad training with my guys, just fucking nailing them in mount or something, because it's, it burns people out real quick, especially if we're going to be in a really intense operation. So I keep it light on, on weekends. We will go over, we'll do a couple exercises, we'll do a little bit of range day. If we're expecting a lot of armory, I'll grab the AT4s. My guys are like, hey, dude, let's do some AT4 practice. Sorry, I'm just watching the video here. The
helicopter.
It's caught my eye and completely distracted me.
So basically, you guys, you start working not necessarily on the plan because it's already planned out, but you make sure guys know what's going to be happening well ahead of time, so that when Sunday does come around and you do get into that briefing that we hold before the operation, your guys are already pretty much squared away. They know the gig on everything. They know who's doing what, so on and so forth. And that's the way everybody does it pretty much, or everybody should be doing it. Because once that op word comes out, that op word comes out on Friday. You still, if you're Task Force Charlie, you have 1 day to prepare. If you're Bravo or Alpha, you've got a couple days to prepare. But that being said, you have to plan for every contingency and what may and may not go wrong, so on and so forth. So even though you're going to get a briefing before the operation starts, you'll still get together with your guys a day or two ahead of time and say, okay, this is what we're doing. This is, what we're going to do in this situation, so on and so forth. And you try to plan out everything that could possibly go wrong. And it never works because it's always something that you didn't plan for ends up fucking you in the end.
Yeah, exactly. But we've got a couple hours before the operation. After my squad training, I got a few hours break. Usually Lieutenant Williams and Garcia and we're all on. I will jump into their channel and we'll have a good chat about it.
Right.
And I'll normally say, what ones if this happens and what is this really the best route to take?
Right, and just kind of go through every step of it. And that's where no plan survives first contact, and it's true. I mean, we plan all fucking day and night, and shit still ends up going wrong. But if we didn't plan like that, it would go even fucking worse. And real quick to jump to some of the guys in chat there, Hoff, believe me, you do not need to have any skills to join this unit. I will train you to the point that you will be able to run alongside any one of these guys, hopefully. But yeah, you definitely don't have to have any skills whatsoever to be able to join. And Ravishal, definitely appreciate it. You'll have to make sure get me a link to a way to get a hold of that at some point in time once you get it done. And continuing on, when we go into the day of operation, if you will. Generally, the platoons will do a brief an hour beforehand. So generally 1900, the platoons will do their brief. Where they'll basically go over the op ward and detail what exactly each squad is going to be doing with everybody in the channel, so that guys can ask questions or bring up concerns, whatever, and just to make sure everybody is on the same page. And not everybody is at the fucking briefing. It's not a required attendance thing, but it's always a good idea to be at the fucking briefing, because things can change sometimes drastically from the op ward during the briefing. So we'll do the briefing an hour beforehand. That usually takes 20-30 minutes or so. And then once the briefing's done, all of the squads are dismissed to their squad channels to either do further briefing and planning, make sure everything's squared away as far as who's doing what, who's carrying what, so on and so forth. And then also just to give the guys a little bit of time to relax. It's almost a calm before the storm, if you will. At least back in my days in 1-4, we'd sit around for, 20-30 minutes, just bullshitting, laughing, joking, having a good time, usually stuffing our face with food, just to kind of, because we know we're about to go into a very stressful situation. So a lot of times the squads tend to, just hang out, joke, or even sometimes just sit there in fucking silence, because they know over the next 2 to 3 hours, it's about to be fucking chaos. So they'll hang out and then start getting loaded into the operation. Now, as you guys know, if you watch any of my streams, when I go in, I load in right at 8 o'clock. Mission start time for us isn't actually until 8:30. So 20:30 is when the mission actually starts. 8 o'clock is when we start loading guys in. That's not the actual mission start. 8:30 is. The reason we start loading guys in at 8 o'clock is because you can't load everyone into the server all at one time. It will just fucking destroy everything. So you have to load them in chunks. So we load in all of the HQ elements and stuff at 8 o'clock. And then we start loading in squad by squad until we get the final squads in there, which is usually around 8:20 or so, which gives us 10 maybe 15 minutes of wiggle room for guys that might be having connection issues, or guys making sure they got all their gear, stuff like that. And then at around 20:30 we'll step off. Then we step off. You guys know very well, we go over an operational recap every week here. We do the mission, get done with it, and stuff like that. What you guys don't know is what happens after the mission is complete. So we complete a mission, we do the task force debrief, which you guys hear at the end of my streams. Okay, that's where the entire task force debriefs on what happened, what went right, what went wrong, so on and so forth. Oftentimes you guys won't hear us necessarily directly criticize what, say, one squad did in the infantry platoon, because that doesn't involve the entire task force. That involves just the infantry platoon. So that kind of shit isn't gone over in the task force debrief. Once we get done with the task force debrief, you guys will always hear us say, okay, you guys are dismissed to your individual debriefs. Now, when we do that, everybody leaves, but they're not done for the night. They now go to their own debrief. So JTACs and air assets will head downstairs and do their debrief. Havoc 4 will head into their room and do their debrief. The infantry platoon will then head into their platoon room and do their debrief. Well, they'll go over all of the individual squads, what they did right, what they did wrong, so on and so forth. So once we get done with the operation itself and we get done with the task force debrief, now these guys have to go in and do all of their individual debriefs. And then for the infantry side of things, you guys go into your platoon debrief, like I said, bring up what was right, what was wrong, and then you guys break down and go into your squad debriefs. So Myers, as a squad leader, when you go into your squad debriefs, is it mostly, do you more so focus on what you guys did right or what you guys did wrong during that operation?
I like to give it a good mix, because I don't want to be sitting there being like, we did this wrong and this wrong and this wrong, because it just gets everyone down. I don't want people leaving.
It breaks
at the end.
the morale.
I don't want people leaving with a bad taste, being like, oh, we did shit tonight, what I will do though is I'll be like, hey guys, so in this occasion I was like, it was more wrong than right, but I was like, hey guys, this is what went wrong. And I'm normally like, this went wrong for these reasons, and we're going to be working on it, and this isn't going to happen again. So, but what went right? And then it kind of banged on about, for example, in my school, my 3IC stood up, and he was on platoon net for a 3IC. And I said, he did a fantastic job. From what I've been told from other squad leaders, he was there, he was all sorted out. I think he even managed to get hold of an android somehow. So he was absolutely on it for that. I know it's really nice to see. And it's something I'll always comment on, if people do something that I wasn't expecting them to do, or it's always nice to say, hey, you guys did a really good job.
Yeah, if someone steps up in a big bad way, it's always good to, be like, hey, you fucking good job not fucking up.
Yeah. Yeah, but usually I like to look at, where it went wrong and what went wrong and how we can avoid it next time.
Right.
And I don't want to keep you guys around for a long time for this, because we've already just gone through 2 debriefs where, there's people who love asking questions and making comments in a task force debrief.
I don't know if it was just me, but I had really bad frame issues. Shut the fuck up. It was not just you.
Yeah. And it's like, everyone put a 1 in chat, we had frame issues. And like, everyone fucking had frame issues. We've gone over this every week.
I never had frame issues. Can we just drop it?
Yeah. But actually, I've been pretty good this deployment, but some other people aren't.
And Diver, to answer your question, as far as HQ, like Unit HQ, us as task force commanders, no, we don't do like individual debriefs. If there's stuff that we need to talk to, a section lead about after they're done with all of their debriefs, then we'll call them into our office and go over the stuff that we need to go over with them. But we don't do like individual, like me and Hammer and Drum don't sit down and do like an actual debrief for us. Usually it just consists of us going, hey, did you fucking see this during the operation? Or hey, did you see this? Or hey, I'm sorry I shot you in the face, but not sorry. Shit like that. But as far as like us debriefing anybody else, no, it's very rare. When it does happen, like I said, we wait until they're done with all of their other debriefs, because I'm not going to make, like, if I need to talk to a platoon leader and one of his squad leaders about something that squad did, I'm not going to make that squad leader's guys sit around and wait for me to debrief their squad leader so that they can do their squad debrief. Like, that'll be at the very end. Everybody else gets to go home. You as a squad leader, you're the one that has to fucking hang out late. So, and that's what Myers was alluding to there. He doesn't want to make his guys wait around because of that fact. We've already gone through, that night started basically at 7 p.m. And then you do your briefing, hang out for a little while, go into the operation, usually done around 10:30. Then you go into your task force debrief, done by like 10:45, go into your platoon debrief, which can sometimes take, up to a half hour. So then you're talking 11:15 by the time you're done with that, and then into your squad debrief. So you're looking, you started your night at 7 p.m. and it's 11:30 potentially before you're done with all of these debriefs and shit. And, granted, they don't always take that long, but they can. So you want to try and get your guys out of there as quickly as you can. Obviously, you want to cover everything that you can, whether it be good or bad, but you also don't want them sitting in there until fucking midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. And going into that, as far as the debriefs go, Patty, for you as a team leader, you have to be there for all of the debriefs. You don't get lucky like us at Unit HQ. As soon as it's done, we're like, hey, fuck this, I'm going to my office and getting food and whatever. You got to be involved in all of that. What are your thoughts on it? Do you enjoy doing all of the debriefs? Do you wish they were shorter? What are your thoughts on it?
I'm under the impression that debriefs on the task force level actually don't take as long as they used to.
Oh, no.
Thank God.
That's because me, Hammer, and Drummer are like, all right, let's get the fuck out of here. I got to take a piss. I want some food. Let's get this done.
Right. So, I mean, it doesn't take too long for me to get to my, to the platoon debrief, and that takes a decent amount of time depending on, how well we did. If LT feels like he needs to yell at us for something, or
right.
if
if you do bad in an operation, the debrief tends to take longer.
It's true. The most amount of time in debriefs that I end up spending is with squad. Like our squad debrief takes the longest amount of time, and yeah, there's a little bit of bullshitting here and there, but most of it is actually really solid criticism from the other fire team leads or from squad lead himself, and it's a good sandwich, like Myers was saying, of this is shit we did well, this is shit we need to work on for training next week. Be prepared to work on that, or
Now, do you think
maybe
that's something that you actually learn from, like coming out of a debrief? Do you feel like you've actually not necessarily improved, but like you come out of a debrief going, okay, yeah, I can improve on that next time? Or is it like, yeah, fuck those guys, I did what I did, whatever?
No, I find I walk out of there normally where it's like I can work on this. Like it normally is something I can work on my own, where it's like, firing on a tank from a specific direction or something like that. But
or not standing on top of a hill skylining before you fire on a tank.
Yeah, about that. But no, yeah, it's we come off from the debriefs as our own critics, and we normally when we come back we'll be like, yeah, I worked on this from last time, and I'm looking forward to trying to work this through into training. And the fire team 2-4 has a solid fire team leads that we can talk to Ro beforehand and be like, we want to work on this,
right?
And can we work this into training? And
you can say, hey, we identified this in the last operation, we talked about it, and the debrief, we need to work on this for training.
The surprise, actually, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, continue, please.
One of the best examples I can say was learning from a situation was when we were dealing with the dam, when we were taking the dam, Task Force Bravo. The weapon squad was almost completely ineffective because we were shooting from such a high position.
Mm-hmm.
And it took to after the mission for somebody to come up to us and be like, hey, you're aware of this function on your binos, right? And JT and I looked at each other in almost a furious rage and was like, no, we did not know about this.
Where it calculates the elevation difference?
The drop angle, yeah. And so we spent the whole next training working with the binos, working with the new functions, and now like we don't worry about that problem anymore.
And that's and very quickly, John, to answer your question. When it comes to ARMA, frame issues is relative. Guys who haven't been playing ARMA for a long time will come into an operation with us and be like, dude, I had horrible frames. I was at like 20 the entire time, and everybody else is going, you lucky fuck. Again, it's relative. For me, when I'm Zeusing like this, I'll always have lower frames because all of the AI are slave to my machine. So I'll get like 15 frames while I'm streaming, which isn't bad from Zeus. Like, you don't really notice that. When I'm on the ground, I average 25 frames while I'm streaming, pretty much at all times. It's very rare that my frames will drop below that, which for ARMA is really goddamn good, especially on this map. I'll say that. Normally it's 30 plus frames, 30 to 35 frames when I'm streaming, but on this map, 25 constant frames is really good. So again, it's all relative. Some people would say 25 frames is having frame issues, but for me, it's not, because I know how bad it can be, because I went through Operation Red Hammer and going through Electro at 4 fucking frames was not fun. So after all of the debriefs, we go through each individual section debrief, platoons go through their debrief, then the squads go through their debriefs. I don't think anybody does fire team debriefs. It would be fucking pointless to. So once the debriefs are done, the work still is not over, guys. And this is where, if you're going to second guess yourself as far as going into a leadership position, especially a squad leader position, this is where it's going to happen. Because not only are you responsible for being up to date on those warnos, those op words, knowing exactly what's going on, being at the briefings, being at all of the debriefs, you then have to write your patrol report, or your AAR, as most of us know them, an after action report. And in that report, you have to detail what your squad did, where you were, estimation of enemies engaged and eliminated, any comments on the operation, what you thought was good, what you thought was bad, ways that things can be improved, so on and so forth. And that patrol report can take, depending upon how detailed you get, can take anywhere from 20 minutes to me back in the day to be a smartass, because the company HQ at the time were constantly busting people's balls for their reports not being detailed enough. Well, luckily me, I recorded all of my shit. So I would go through, and on Monday afternoon when I would get home from work, I would sit down and watch my video and make my patrol report so goddamn detailed that they would want to fucking stab themselves in the eyes, right down to the point that I would have timestamps of every single movement that my squad did during an operation. And I would spend 3 hours writing my patrol report on Monday just to piss off the company HQ at that time, because they would have to sit there and read all that shit. But yeah, so the squad leaders then have to go through, and each section lead, so whoever was flying that night and stuff like that, have to go through and write their patrol reports. And they have to get that in within 48 hours of them, finishing their operation. And that is finally the end of an operational week for someone. So, again, to kind of recap on that, Wednesday, we have the war note come out. Thursday, we do the planning meeting. Friday, the operation order comes out. And then Saturday is either an operation for Task Force Charlie or, continued planning and brainstorming for the other two task forces. And then Sunday, we have Task Force Alpha or Task Force Bravo. We do the briefing at 1900, do the operation at 2030, get done with the operation around 2200, do the debriefs. Everything's said and done there. By 11 p.m., you're done with all of that. So 2300, you're done with all of that. And then as a squad leader or above, you go in and write your patrol reports. So really for you, an operational week doesn't end until the Monday after you're all said and done. Now, and yes, John, to answer your question, my specs are actually in YouTube. They're not. The CPU I am running is the i7-6700. So for those of you right now, you're probably thinking, holy fuck, that is way too much work that goes into a mission, especially for guys in leadership positions. Like, you have all this fucking planning, mission, debriefing, all this fucking shit that you have to do. How in the fuck do you guys find time for all of this? You also have to keep in mind that's every other week that happens. You see me and Drum in operations every weekend because we're also filling in. But the guys, for their primary billets, they only do that every other week. And it's not always, like I said, doesn't always take as long as what I said. Sometimes it does, though. That being said, that's why when someone takes a position as a squad leader, they really need to know what they're getting into and how much time it does take to do it properly. Now, that being said, as a regular fire team member, you don't have near that much responsibility as what like a squad leader does, or even what a team leader does. But if we didn't put in that much work, if we did not put in all of that planning that goes into the conceptualization of the deployment, the storyboarding of the campaign, and then going in and doing the planning for the different phases, figuring out what objectives we're going to be taking, and then us as task force commanders figuring out which task force is going to take which objective, and then us having the planning meeting and deciding who's going to be moving what direction, which squad is going to be going where from the platoon leaders, and then them briefing their guys, and then going to the operation and then do all of the debriefs. If we didn't put all of that work into it and do all of that planning and all of that debriefing, I can't imagine what one of our operations would look like. I can't imagine it because I've been in a unit before that did not do really any planning and just went in and did shit. And I'll tell you exactly what it looks like. Have any of you ever been to Barnum and Bailey? It's a circus. It looks like that. What about you guys, Avery? Avery, do you think that the planning and all the work that goes into the operations, do you think it's too much, or do you appreciate how much work goes into all of it?
I mean, I would say it's from someone from the outside, yeah, it could be a little too much, but like I think we're just all accustomed to at this point where it doesn't seem like anything anymore.
Right. When you lay it all out and like actually verbally, say what all goes into it, it's like, oh, holy fuck, that is a lot of stuff. But when you live it, it's like, no, it ain't that bad.
Yeah, it's just one big machine. There's a bunch of cogs, and we're all working well together, and it gets done.
Right. And do you think that the unit would be worse off or better off if we put less work into it?
Worse off, definitely.
I would agree.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Myers, what about you? I mean, you do a lot more, again, because you're a battle captain. You have to get into even more detail and more planning and stuff like that. Do you think that it's too much sometimes?
No, the reason why we are, one of the few units out that has such good quality deployments, not to, big myself up, or just in terms of the entire series, is because we put all this effort and we do what we do, and we're good at what we do. Probably one of the best out there. And there's a method to the madness. There's always, there's reasons why we debrief. And there's reasons why we do all this other stuff. And, before, kind of talking about debriefing, I have a notepad. I write down stuff that, I write down what we've done wrong. And people kind of forget, like, for me, I usually on Sundays, I won't get to bed till about 5 a.m. my time, so I'm hours ahead of you guys. So by the time we're done, it's 5 a.m. for me. And then I'm up the next morning in uni on my laptop typing up my patrol report.
The 506 ruining college educations all over the world.
Yeah, I've sat in the back of a lecture before my laptop and been like, what are you typing? It doesn't matter. I'm just typing. just doing a patrol report. But no, it's if we didn't do it to this level, we wouldn't be what we are today. So.
Yeah. Again, I would definitely agree. Patty, what about yourself? What do you think as far as the amount of effort that goes into even a single operation? Do you think that it can be too much at times?
Yes, for the people who do it. But the people who do it, like, I can appreciate everything that they put into it. Like, seeing the storyline of, Operation Crimson Moon, like that takes a lot of creativity to build something like that. So I applaud the people who were able to do that.
You just don't envy them.
I just don't envy them, no. At the same time, I'm sitting over here looking for an S billet that I can, put some time, extra time into. Because
don't get into S3. There's a reason we're the biggest shop.
No, for sure. The other funny thing that you mentioned was the outside people thinking it's way too much work for a game. When I first joined the 506, I tried recruiting a bunch of my other friends because they played Arma, but they played Arma wrong. I'll put it that way. They played Arma wrong. And I told them, like, come join this unit. Like, it's a lot of fun. The realism will make it worth your while. And they're like, nah, 2 weeks of OSIT and recruit training and all that. Like, it's too much work for a game. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, and I can definitely understand that viewpoint. Like, if you just want to hop in a game and be able to fucking play, like, yeah, it's way too much work to do. But that's why the people that we have are so good, is because that's not what they're looking for. They're not just looking to, hop in and play a game. They're looking for an entire experience, which is what a lot of that planning provides. If we didn't do that, you guys wouldn't have near the fucking experiences that you do have, and be able to, years down the road, still be able to talk about, Operation A when you did fucking thing B, And we had a really good question here in chat from Kerr. Even though he changed his name, I'm still going to call him Kerr. When you run Zeus for a mission, how much do you play by ear how the AI reacts, and how much do you keep to the storyline, i.e. operation? Do you just set up the AI to what they think the enemy would do, or would be doing at that point in the phase, or do you plan each night based off of mission strength? Short answer is a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. Essentially, once we know what each task force is doing, then and a battle captain will drop a Zeus guide, giving us a general guideline of what the enemy's objective is for that night, and somewhat what toys we have to play with. Now, it doesn't detail, exactly how many troops down to the individual fire teams that you have to spawn in, but it will tell us, you have 3 main battle tanks to work with, you have 4 Tunguskas to work with, stuff like that. But those are all just kind of loose guidelines, because as Zeus operators, our job first and foremost is to make sure the guys have a good time. So we have to take into account how many guys are going to be in the operation. If for some reason there's a lot of guys missing that night, we have to kind of scale things back a little bit so that they don't just get fucking obliterated, even though there's still a good chance that they can fail that mission. B, we have to take into account when there is a full task force there and they're just annihilating shit, which has happened to be multiple times. And as you guys have heard me, directly tell one of my Zeus operators, not enough or too much is never enough. Because, you'll spawn in 400 troops and think, okay, this will fucking take them all night. And then for some reason, just everything aligns and that fucking task force will mow those guys down like they are nothing. And then you're just sitting there with your dick in your hand like, well, fuck, what am I supposed to do now? And that's when we'll send in counterattacks and stuff like that. And that's where, as a Zeus operator, you have to be very in tune with that task force. And, when they're doing good, when they're doing bad, when you need to pressure them really hard, when you need to lay off, or when you don't want to lay off. And your objective is to make them fail, which does happen. It has been a couple of times my objective to make them fail, and they didn't fucking fail because the task force commander is a strong-headed sumbitch. So like I said, it's a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. You definitely, we have a general guideline of what our objective is as the enemy commander, but we also have a responsibility to make sure the guys have a good time. So that makes things a little bit more difficult as the video wraps up here on YouTube. And Ravishal, thank you very much for that 5-spot, brother. Says it better than TV. I don't know about that, but I definitely appreciate the compliment. That being said, guys, any last-minute closing thoughts on any of the shit that we've gone over here tonight? I'll just kind of go down the line. Avery, any last-minute thoughts on stuff tonight?
No, I don't think I have anything, Top.
All right, and Myers, what about you? Anything, any last-minute stuff to say to the masses watching?
No, nothing for me, Top.
God, you guys are worse than a fucking task force debrief. Patty, what about you?
I got something. Keep Thunder on a leash so I can blow some more shit up, huh?
Yeah,
People thought that won't happen.
Good fucking luck with that. Yeah, definitely good luck with that. Yeah, like Hammer says in chat there, don't forget to like and subscribe and all of that good stuff. No, the one, yeah, also Star Citizen referral code, you fucking slut. The last thing I will go over to kind of whore myself out here a little bit today, guys, is do keep in mind that if you want to get involved in the podcast, which some guys are finally getting involved in it, sending me stuff that they want to hear us talk about and everything, make sure to scroll down and check out that Patreon link. And you can get involved in the podcast, whether it be, just getting early access to it, because as you guys know, once this live stream is done, this is all deleted until next week. But my Patreon guys, they get access to it tomorrow afternoon. So if you missed the beginning of the podcast or whatever, you can go back and listen to it via the Patreon link. Also, you can send in topics that you want to hear me or the other minions talk about, or even potentially be a guest on the podcast. So if you want to hop in here and be able to shoot the shit with the guys and talk about whatever the fuck you want to talk about, make sure you check out that Patreon link down below. And thank you very much there, Kerr. Kerr is one of my Patreons. So that is going to be it for tonight, guys. I definitely appreciate all of you hanging out. I know it was a pretty long one tonight. And I greatly fucking appreciate all the channel support tonight from Assault, Bezo, Ravishall. Thank you guys for the continued support to the channel. You have no idea how much that fucking means to me. And hopefully all of you guys enjoyed tonight. And that is going to be it for War Games Podcast number 11. Have a good night, everyone.